Yesterday, when I was recording this, we lost Ozzy Osbourne at the age of 76. And saying that Ozzy was one of the most important musicians ever is kind of an understatement. I mean, how many people can claim that they helped directly invent a whole new subgenre of music that went on to become one of the most beloved and cherished cultures and lifestyles ever, anywhere? So I thought that today I would explore a little bit what kind of influences and inspirations Ghost took from Ozzy Osbourne and from Black Sabbath. Now, Tobias has went on record saying that Ozzy was an inspiration. Of course, he grew up in the 80s, so that's when Ozzy's solo career was really at its peak, and he was showing up as this insane madman on media and biting heads off bats and snorting ants and everything. I recommend that everyone read Ozzy's autobiography. It is an insane read. There's some crazy, crazy shit that happens here. I got this as a gift some years ago, and it's just wonderfully insane. Sure, Ozzy has this madman persona, this crazy persona, but what people don't give him enough credit for is for helping shape the modern metal concert. Now, back in the 70s, Black Sabbath started off as a blues band, so their shows were, four guys on the stage playing the hell out of their instruments, and that's what they were up until the very end. Kind of, we ignore the 80s and 90s. But it was when Ozzy went solo in the beginning of the 80s that he really started experimenting with the big stage production and with the insane stage props and shit like that. Ask anyone who's seen Ozzy live, they will tell stories of him throwing water at people, throwing foam at people, throwing whatever else he had at hand at people, showing his hole, and and just generally being a bombastic, crazy type of production to match the energy of his music. And I think that's very safe to say that that's something that inspired Ghost a lot. Of course, that wasn't the only inspiration. There were the Rolling Stones doing that, and Alice Cooper doing that, and Kiss, of course. But Ozzy was also a very important part of this conversation, and I don't think he gets mentioned enough for that. One thing that Tobias has directly cited as an influence, though, is in his songwriting. And side note, there are those kinds of videos that you see about Ghost where they're just reading off an interview that Tobias did like some months or years ago. If you want that, you're gonna have to watch another video from another channel, okay? Because I don't do that. I'm not just gonna read out from some interview that I didn't do just for clicks and add nothing to it just for clicks, so this is not what we're gonna do. But now I'm gonna talk about an interview that Tobias did for Loudwire when Prequel was about to come out, and he was talking about watching an Ozzy concert video, and the very first song that Ozzy performs is a song called I Don't Know, which in fact was the first song from Ozzy's last show. Tobias talked a little bit about how perfect of a show opener that is, and that's true. It's one of the biggest, boldest, most energetic openings any artist has ever done. When you would go to see Ozzy live, you would expect him to start with that song because it gets the crowd hyped, it gets the crowd moving, and it's just an integral part of his showmanship. And Tobias said he wanted to channel a bit of that, so that's why he wrote Rats. Ghost has this really big history of bombastic show openers. There's Kaisarion, and of course Peacefield, and Square Hammer, which Ghost has two live albums. One starts with Square Hammer and the other ends with Square Hammer. How do you write a song that works so well in both contexts? I don't know, but that song does. Goes a long way into making a live show that will stick out. I still remember my first Ghost show and how they opened with Kaisarion with the big guitar riff and the big high note and the pyrotechnics and all that stuff, and then they just ran straight into Rats, and that's where everyone went crazy singing along. And so that's the kind of effect that Ozzy had on people that Ghost is incorporating in their show so well. And talking about incorporating Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne into Ghost, of course we can't not mention here Back to the Beginning. Papa V Perpetua performed Bark at the Moon, one of the best and most beloved Ozzy songs, and he did such a great job of that. It's crazy to compare the Bark at the Moon cover versus the Bohemian Rhapsody cover. I feel like even though the Bohemian Rhapsody cover is very good and very impressive, Bark at the Moon just feels so much better because he's so loose, he's so comfortable. Even though that song is not easy to sing at all, he's so comfortable and he's so energetic and he's working the crowd and he's running all up and down the stage and he's introducing Nuno Bettencourt as he plays his guitar solo, and that's just so good. And it's so good to see Tobias in his element performing as Papa V Perpetuo and just giving it his all on a song that inspired him, for a musician that inspired him. And that's one of my favorite Ghost covers now, and they have a lot of very good covers. But fun fact about the Back of the Beginning show, Tobias actually wanted to do a different song. Some people in Back to the Beginning, like Sammy Hagar, asked to do No More Tears. They didn't let him do that, but he also asked for Flying High Again, and so they gave him Flying High Again. The most Tobias Forge thing ever is that he asked to do a Black Sabbath B-side, a song from Sabotage called Am I Going Insane, which is an awesome song that I recommend you guys go check out, because you will hear how that could have been a Ghost song, really. It has like a vibe that's very different from the rest of the Black Sabbath and Ozzy catalog, and you can see why Tobias wanted to do that. But you can also see why the producers didn't let him do it, because how many people know Am I Going Insane versus how many people know Bark at the Moon? You can't really do a very deep cut. Unless you're Metallica, then they'll let you do anything you want anyway, so But yeah, I think it's very much speaks to how much of a nerd and how much of a metalhead, just like us, Tobias is. You know, he also grew up listening. I grew up listening to Black Sabbath. I mean, this, which you can't see at all because of the weird lighting that I have, it was one of my first CDs that I ever bought, and it's 13 by Black Sabbath. And that's their 2013 album, which has some very fun songs, even though it's not up to the standard of their old material. It's a very good album, and it's a very fitting farewell for Ozzy and Black Sabbath, even though that's not the complete Black Sabbath. But anyways, I digress. It just really goes to show that Tobias is a metalhead, and Tobias is a big fucking nerd, just like you and me. So, you know, it's kind of cool to know that Tobias asked to do like a Black Sabbath song that nobody knows. I don't know, that just tickles my brain. Of course, the sound of Ghost owes a lot to Black Sabbath. A joke that you will see made a lot is that Ghost puts the ABBA in Black Sabbath. You've heard that a million times. But it's kind of true. The wonder of a song like Satan Prayer is that they take a sinister riff and a sinister melody that is very Black Sabbath-esque, and then they put a boot-scats disco beat on it, and they make it dancey, and they make it hooky and fun. And I feel like that's very Ozzy, because when Ozzy went solo, he showed everyone that you can write metal in the major key. I mean, people clown on Crazy Train for being like, in the first 30 seconds. And then for the rest of the song, it's just like an 80s warm-up song. Crazy, but that's how it goes. But, you know, that's what makes Ozzy so fun. That's what makes his music so endearing. So in songs like Dance Macabre, so in songs like Kiss the Goat, Kaisarion, where Ghost goes for that big, almost happy thing going on, that's just, you know, classic metal. That's just Ozzy and Alice Cooper and Black Sabbath and Rainbow, and it makes you feel good. But also there's some more direct links, I feel. The first Ghost album was recorded on a Gibson SG. Now, I happen to own an SG. No, it's not a Gibson, because, let's face it, if it was a Gibson, I would be playing the songs that I'm talking about in the actual video, because then if I got demonetized, no problem, I still had money. But anyways, I own an SG, and I get very annoyed whenever people look at it and go, oh, Angus Young, right? AC/DC. No, I got this because of Tony Iommi. I got this because of Black Sabbath, god damn it. But either way, you might know that this is Tobias Forge's main guitar that he used even back in the Repugnant days. And Opus Eponymous was recorded on one of these. There's something about an SG where you can get this really thick sound from it, this really dark sound, but it's also very midsy, and it goes very well with the vintage amps that Black Sabbath was using and that Ghost was using to replicate that Black Sabbath sound. So when you hear a song like Death Knell, that song could have been recorded by Black Sabbath in 1971, because that riff, the that's so Black Sabbath, that's so Doom. It reminds me of a song like Behind the Wall of Sleep, because that one has that kind of eerie, unsettling feel to it, you know, without being overbearing. It's a slow song, it's a slow burner, but it's also, you know, menacing. And I feel like a lot of early Ghost has that kind of gist to it. Like Stand By Him could have 100% been recorded by Black Sabbath or Satan Prayer. And that bass lick on Prime Mover has always reminded me of Evil Woman. You should check that song out as well. But yes, I believe you could get any song from Opus Eponymous and say that could have been a Black Sabbath song, and most of them would be accurate, and I think that's a key aspect of early Ghost. One song that Ghost did a little bit later that reminds me a lot of Black Sabbath is Cerise, because again, for Cerise they brought back that kind of doom metal sound. For those of you who don't know what doom metal means, it basically means Black Sabbath core. I'm sorry, I love doom metal, but like 90% of doom metal is just bands doing the Black Sabbath stuff, which I'm so glad that Ghost doesn't do just that and they have more stuff going on for them, because I wouldn't be that interested if they did just that. But anyways, for Cerise, Ghost brought the doom sound back from Opus Eponymous, and that song just has that evil Tony Iommi style riffing, that kind of Into the Void riffing, you know, that really slow and it's heavy and it's really dark and menacing and it consumes you, you know. It's heavy metal that isn't heavy because it's aggressive or because it's fast or technical. It's just because it's that evil sounding. Cerise is such a Black Sabbath song. On the same album, I think that Absolution also has a little bit of Black Sabbath. Less Ozzy Osbourne era Black Sabbath and more Dio Black Sabbath, you know, both in how it sounds like. If you get a song like Children of the Sea or Wishing Well is a very good one that reminds me of Absolution. And the kind of a lyrical content as well, I feel like that will work in Dio's style. So even though this video is about Ozzy Osbourne, I'm going to open a bracket here just to talk about Dio era Sabbath, because Black Sabbath has had 10 singers and 2 of them were perfect. Like Ozzy was perfect, Dio was perfect, you can't argue about that. Tony Martin was a very good singer, but yeah, I like Ian Gillan era Black Sabbath, but it's 90% because of this thing. This fucking album cover. And because I have bad taste, but you know. I want to open this bracket to talk about Dio era Sabbath because I also think that influenced Ghost in the song Respite on the Spitalfields. It's Ghost's most epic song, and it sounds like Black Sabbath's most epic album, Heaven and Hell. Go give Heaven and Hell and Children of the Sea and Die Young a listen, and you will see that kind of like epic cosmic feel, contrasting the guitar riffs with a beautiful chord session and soaring vocals and lyrics that are beautiful in their darkness. I feel like that's a thing that Dio was very good at. He could write lyrics that were very dark but that were very beautiful as well, and I think Ghost took that as an influence for sure. Here's some other Ghost songs that kind of remind me of Black Sabbath. Genesis. Now, I did say that everything on Opus could be a Black Sabbath song, and that is true, but Genesis specifically I'm singling out because it doesn't remind me of Black Sabbath in the way that the other Opus songs remind me of Black Sabbath, but because Black Sabbath also had that tradition of having really pretty instrumental tracks in their albums, like Fluff, like Orchid, Solitude, and instrumental breaks in their songs, like in Symptom of the Universe. It's a very good example of a thick medieval riff, and then the song just goes into almost a bossa nova type thing. And so I feel like that song also reminds me of Black Sabbath in that sense. Cenotaph from Skeletor 100% is Children of the Grave. It's the same kind of rhythm, and I feel like that was a thing that threw people off when they were listening to Cenotaph for the first time, because they heard the chun 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 chun, and they expected a Children of the Grave style heavy hitter, and then it starts with "At the top of the mountain," and you're like, whoa, what am I listening to? To me, that's one of the best things about this song, the subversion of expectations. Some people didn't like that, and I'm just glad that I can enjoy a song that they can't. More for me, I guess. The first 5 seconds of Depth of Satan's Eyes could have been on Paranoid. The first guitar riff on Monstrous Clock could have been on Master of Reality. And Peraspera ad Inferi is 100% a Mob Rules style riff. Call Me Little Sunshine has a very Black Sabbath-esque feel to it, especially in that opening riff. And because of the song, when they announced that Papa was gonna sing at Back to the Beginning, I thought he was gonna do NIB. Now, that's very foolish of me in retrospect. Of course, they wouldn't have given NIB for just anyone to sing, because you've got Geezer fucking Butler playing with Black Sabbath. Like, it would be sacrilege to have anyone else play that song instead of him. But if Black Sabbath wasn't performing that night, I think that Ghost would have done a wonderful cover of NIB, because the topic is there. It would have been just like when he did Sympathy for the Devil, when he's talking from the point of view of the devil and really incarnating this character. I don't know, I think Tobias would have done a wonderful cover of that song, and I really wish that we hear more Black Sabbath covers from Ghost in the futures, even though I don't think it's really gonna happen. Those are my unscripted, unorganized thoughts about Ozzy and Black Sabbath and their influence on Ghost. I hope that you people enjoyed this video. You know, put on some Ozzy Osbourne, put on some Black Sabbath, enjoy those albums, enjoy that music, because we may lose the man, but we'll never lose the impact that the man had on our lives, us, you know, metal fans and people who live this lifestyle and this culture and that are passionate about this kind of music. It all goes back to those 4 guys from Birmingham, and I'm just so glad that we got to experience in our lifetimes those guys bow out. And I think everyone who dedicates their life to music and to something that they truly believe in needs a farewell like Ozzy's. Thousands of people watching, and dozens of bands that were influenced by you and are paying their respects and are paying tribute to you. One last time before you get to say goodbye to this life. You know, I think everyone deserves to go like Ozzy did. So, salute the Prince of Darkness. Listen to Black Sabbath. Listen to Ozzy Osbourne. Tell me, did you like this video? Would you like me to do a video like this for any other bands that I think influenced Ghost and their sound? I would really like to know. Peace, love, subscribe, follow me on Instagram. I'm feeling happy. I feel so sad. I've lost the best friend that I ever had. I'm going through changes. Well, it's just as I was preparing to record this, my hematite ring that I wear exploded, so I guess I'm protected from whatever evil was sent to me while I was recording this video. Well...